The one real difference between the United States and other countries is killings with guns. That's
Not
very
anymore.
high. Yeah, it's very high here as compared to other countries.
No longer. We're number 12. England and Australia are number 1 and 2 now.
In deaths by guns?
Yes, now they are.
I don't think.
London is now more dangerous. It's all on Infowars.com.
Let me check my source. Hang on. It says here it's me. I said it. You can look it up on what's coming out of my mouth right now. Yeah, very yin and yang. Yeah. Hey, it's the Goblin Queen. Well, I could watch something else, and everybody's still here. We were watching a little bit of Alex Jones the other day, and I was kind of commenting how sometimes old Alex Jones sounds like Chomsky. And Phil and Station was saying, "Oh, dude, there's a debate between Alex Jones and Noam Chomsky." And I was like, "What? There is?" And I looked it up, and I found it. And yeah, maybe this would be fun to watch right now, right? You guys in the mood for some Jones versus Chomsky? Because I think it's pretty good. This is from 25th of May, 2001. So Jones, it's kind of funny the way people think about Alex Jones, right? Because everybody knows him now. Jones is a known guy. He's a known quantity. He was kind of instrumental in helping Trump win the election. He would mention crazy shit on his show, and then Trump would repeat his points the next day, kind of shit. Really, really intense. And people know about him from, John Oliver and stuff, and I don't want them putting chemical in the water to turn the freaking frogs gay, that kind of shit. But Jones is kind of a weird guy. Like, he's always been conservative, for sure. And I guess maybe a libertarian sense. Definitely more conservative than liberal. He talks a lot about communism. What pilled Jones was reading a book by a John Birch Society guy, None Dare Call It Conspiracy, which I've read a lot of conspiratorial books, and that one is the dumbest one about what communism is. Very stupid. Goof-brained shit. I love that phrase. Yeah, the frog thing is actually kind of true. It sounds crazy, but yeah, there were chemicals in the water that were making frogs, I think, hermaphroditic or something like that. It was fucking up their sex organs, which doesn't mean that they're gay. Okay, gay is just their sexual orientation. I think it would have made more sense if he said that turn the frickin' frogs queer, right? Because intersex is in the LGBTQI, blah, 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 blah. That is, queer would have been fair, but gay is technically the wrong part of the rainbow. But yeah, no, he wasn't wrong. He was not wrong. And when we do make fun of him for that, we sort of are doing the work of these evil corporations that do put chemicals into the water without giving a fuck about how that'll affect the local habitat. But on the other hand, it's extremely funny the way he phrased it. So yeah, you gotta pick your battles there. But in 2000, right? 2000, he makes so just to place this interview in time. 2000, Alex Jones is broadcasting out of his son's bedroom in Austin, Texas. He decides to make a documentary about Bohemian Grove called Dark Secrets, I think. This is before Bush is elected. He's very against Bush because Bush is at Bohemian Grove and he's protesting Bush. He's like, fuck you, Bush. Bush wins the election. Jones hates his guts. This is in May 2001, so this is before fucking, what's the word, 9/11, where obviously Jones went really hard against Bush, got very into the 9/11 conspiracy truther movement. But I think people forget, Jones was lefties kind of liked Jones at this time because he was talking a lot about Bush and very against Bush. In 2008, I'm pretty sure Jones voted for Obama, someone who he would later call a demon. But, if you think about it from Jones's kind of, conspiracy-addled weirdo brain, he often talks about how there's no difference between the left and the right. It's all a smokescreen. It's all fake. The two parties support each other, blah, blah, blah. In a kind of dumbass version of Chomsky, right? And Obama did sort of represent, in a similar way to Trump, the outsider perspective, right? Not in a sense where Trump was actually hated by most politicians on both sides. Obama was black. That does make him a bit of an outsider. So, yeah, it's sort of interesting. Do I have that wrong? Let me check this out. Also, Big Jerry, great comment. Big Jerry, are you a real person? I feel like I'm always seeing you commenting great stream, and you comment it once an hour every hour. Are you real? Do I have that wrong? I believe, I don't know if he voted. Hang on. Alex Jones voted for Obama. Let's just try that. Let's see what that gets us. Did Alex Jones vote for Obama? The Obama deception. That's 2009. The Obama deception debunked. Maybe I'm wrong about this. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to say I must have been wrong. I really thought that was the case. But in any case, the guy is not necessarily as right-wing as you might think he was. He certainly was against Bush. Let's watch this. Let's see where this goes. This interview between Noam Chomsky, one of my former heroes. A little bit harder to say that nowadays with his recent kind of Epstein connections coming out, and Alex Jones.
Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Welcome back, my friends, to the second hour of the broadcast. We're going to be joined by Noam Chomsky coming up here just a couple minutes.
Crazy. I mean, yeah, it's annoying because he's using the Star Wars music, and I know that's going to get this copyright struck immediately, but whatever.
He is a institute professor of linguistics and semantical syntax and philosophy of language at MIT in Massachusetts. And he's written books like Manufacturing Consent, an excellent video, also titled Manufacturing Consent. And it goes into how they stage things, how they will have a supposed debate on television, but the people debating are actually on the same side. They're just debating the exact implementation by just a few degrees, giving you the psychological illusion there's really some type of difference. So
yeah. Noam doesn't stand a chance. Alex Jones drinks bone broth milkshakes. Alex Jones is on so much alpha brain, his brain is actually omega. I don't know.
That in your mind, you're going to fall in supposedly either phony camp being steered in the direction they wish. Now, that's how I put it. Chomsky does it in a little bit more sophisticated fashion, but they do.
But he's not wrong. What he's saying is kind of like what Chomsky says, kind of, right? And he even says there, Chomsky says it in much more sophisticated fashion. Isn't it also funny how, if you've seen the 2000 Dark Secrets doc, and Jones's voice is so different and less scratchy, and I'm Alex Jones, and I'm a radio broadcaster here in Austin, Texas. And now he's already in 2001. A year later, he's like, and we got Noam Chomsky on the program.
Do this all the time. Just every level of propaganda you can imagine. He also gets into what the editors do with the newspaper articles, how television's controlled, and he comes to the same conclusion that we have, that it is a global elite controlling it and steering it and dumbing down the population and manipulating us with words. Words mean things. And this also fits into the whole moral relativism debate, because what does is mean with Bill Clinton? It's simply a way to neutralize any type of dissent, and it's working wonders upon the minds of the American people. It's like Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative. Liberals, conservatives, you look at what they do at the top, they're all the same people. The political left has secret police that wear black uniforms and ski masks. The political right has police that wear black uniforms and ski masks around the world.
Definitely Beaver. In fact, he directly plagiarizes Limbaugh later in this clip. We'll get to, but 100%. Limbaugh is the father of all these guys. Limbaugh was the fucking source material for everyone. Fucking Jones, Ben Shapiro, blah, blah, blah. Very few of them rise to the level of natural broadcasting talent and charisma that Limbaugh had, but I think Jones is definitely up there among the very top. One of the best people at what he does. Yeah, Alex Jones, ACAB. Yeah.
Centralized government, and they tell you to be in the middle of that system. More semantical deceptions.
Big Jerry, great stream. What is this? Come on, Big Jerry. Make Big Jerry a mod. Yeah. You know what? He's earned it. He's here every week, and he's always saying good things. I'm going to make you a mod. Big Jerry, you are officially, I knight thee. I dub thee Sir Jerry of the Great Stream.
Always corralling thoughts and ideas, giving you phony decisions, phony choices. That, my friends, is the essence of modern mind control, behavioral modification. And until you realize that the sitcoms and the cartoons have more...
Whoa, Big Jerry, you said something different? Wait, you're real? What the hell? Big Jerry, say something else if you can. Okay, that's crazy. Big J, you deserve it so much. Yeah, thank you all. Wait, that's also pretty similar to, not exactly the same, but... Because, you know, the first time I saw you say big stream, I was actually like, that's really nice. But then you said it every stream a few times, and I'd be like, what the heck? Wait a minute. And now I'm actually more confused than ever. But yeah, so Jones is kind of explaining what Chomsky thinks. And he's not doing a bad job of it. He's actually kind of nailing it.
Till you realize that the sitcoms and the cartoons have more propaganda in them than the newspaper or the nightly news, you will not even begin to scratch the surface of the level of this inculcation, of this soaking into the propaganda state. Every facet.
Jerry, you got me so bad. But yes, you're welcome. You earned it.
Every level. Deluged. Infested. The human mind's like a computer. Garbage in, garbage out.
Now he's just kind of going off on a Jones rant that doesn't fully make sense.
They're training us with phony meanings for words. They are conditioning us to believe in a false political paradigm and system. That's basically what it boils down to. And Noam Chomsky calls it manufacturing consent, the phony choice between the Republicans and the Democrats, this huge globalist corporate state that claims that it's capitalist. How is it capitalist to use huge government international bureaucracies to go after your competition?
Well, you mean that is the inevitable outcome of capitalism, where wealth accumulation generates more power. The more power you have, the more you're able to tilt the government in favor of people who have that much wealth. That's why you have neoliberalism being created. That's why you have the new fucking neoliberalism, which is basically, you know, fucking Mencius Moldbug shit, anarcho-capitalist shit, the fucking libertarian Peter Thiel type, you know, faux libertarian. Let's use the state to allow the tech elites to do whatever they want. It's delusional to think that capitalism could have any other outcome. This is what capitalism leads to. So now he's kind of off on his own little thing, you know, oh, it's crony capitalism, whatever. Chomsky definitely doesn't agree with this part, but I mean, you know.
To take in massive sums of corporate welfare, and then to be able to twist the debate.
Yeah, Jones, that's just good business. That's just called being a good businessman. Why, if you're truly a good businessman trying to help your business thrive, why wouldn't you take advantage of the power of the state to do so?
Into a fight over, aren't we going to take care of the poor? And that really has nothing to do with it. That's semantical deception, ladies and gentlemen. Joining us is Professor Noam Chomsky from MIT. Professor, it's a real honor to have you on the show.
Glad to be with you.
You bet. Tell us a little bit about it.
Totally agree, Magar. In order to do the grifts Jones is doing, you have to be a particular kind of intelligent. Totally. I do think Jones is an incredibly skilled broadcaster, and I actually think he's just so good on his feet. He's very... He should have been an improviser. He should have been on Whose Line Is It Anyway? Or Dropout or something. He is... You can never stump him. He's always gonna... He just keeps going. He just always has something to say. He's very good at filling airtime.
About yourself and about the studies you've done and some of the books you've written and what type of system we live in today in your analysis.
Well, I have two parallel and separate lives. One of them is what they pay me to do at MIT, that linguistics.
Chomsky, on the other hand, not a good broadcaster. Not a particularly charming speaker. I wish he was. Oh, God. Oh, man, it would be so much easier to get people to check out his ideas, but never was that great.
The others, that they would probably pay me not to do, that's being involved in a whole variety of social and political issues, international affairs, the international economy, foreign policy problems, just about anything you can think of that's in the front pages of the newspapers. And one part of that, which has interested me for many years, is that kind of analysis of ideological institutions that includes the intellectual culture, but specifically the media, which I've spent a lot of time on. So it's that collection of topics. What kind of system do we live in? That requires an essay.
That requires an essay. Well, I would call it almost a matrix-like system where 98% of people don't even know the real parameters of power that surround them, phony paradigms and systems of phony left, right, with all the roads leading towards a centralized, highly controlled corporate bureaucracy.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I think the only thing I would add as a kind of a footnote is that marginalization of the public that you're describing is quite purposeful and conscious, self-conscious.
But isn't this interesting though? Because Chomsky's like, yeah, no, I totally agree. And in fact, Chomsky's even like, the only disagreement I have is it's actually even more of a conspiracy than you're saying. It's actually intentional, this marginalization of the average media consumer. It's something that's done on purpose. Chomsky's, I don't know, like, I just think it's so funny. Like, he's not disagreeing with him at all. In fact, he's kind of egging him on a little bit here.
So, especially through the 20th, actually it goes back to the founding of the country, but it's particularly in the 20th century, there has been a very self-conscious, explicit effort. I mean, you don't have to make it nothing speculative, but the leaders say so. Business leaders, intellectuals, academic, social scientists, and others say that it is important to keep the public out of things. It's important to ensure that the public remain what are called spectators, not participants. They're supposed to be directed to other concerns and not to interfere with policy formation. That is a major phenomenon developed in the more democratic countries, in the United States and England particularly, through the 20th century. And the reason was very clear. By the early 20th century, it was becoming very difficult to control people by other means. The voting franchise was extending. Labor unions were developing. Women were...
Now he's kind of drifting over into left-wing shit here, right? Talking about how labor unions are suppressed and stuff. But I think he's doing it in a way that kind of sneaks past Alex Jones' defenses.
Demanding the vote. I mean, the countries, especially England and the United States, were simply becoming more democratic. And it was recognized early on that if you can't control people by force or...
You think Noam's full of shit? I mean, you know, the Epstein stuff's bad, but I think Noam, for the most part, like here, I think he's great.
You know, poverty or some other means, you are going to have to control them by what was quite openly called propaganda at the time. People don't like the term propaganda anymore, but that was used. Oh, that's where the U.S. public relations industry grows out of these experiences and this understanding, and it is very explicit.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, public relations as a field, that's basically completely conscious way of manufacturing consent and being like, how can we get people to change what they believe? Oh, our product, whatever, tobacco, people don't want to buy it. People are afraid that it's dangerous. We need to hire people whose job it is to change public opinion. We got to do marketing. We got to do this. We got to do that. This is a very blatant example of this. I feel like, I mean, part of me is, I feel maybe Noam didn't really know who Alex Jones was before this interview because he just kind of says yes to everything. Or, he did it this time. He's like, well, this is probably a good opportunity to get my message across. And I don't want to disagree with some of the stuff he's saying is kind of bullshit. But for the most part, he's got the right idea. And let me try to lean into that. I don't know. I'm not sure what was going through his head, but I think it's kind of funny the way he's doing it. Handling it so far.
They put out their papers that I read from the Carnegie Endowment and others that mind control, behavioral modification is much cheaper and much more effective than tanks and guns.
Noam said he reaches for his gun out of hatred when he hears the term dialectics, and his linguistics work was used for imperialism being metaphysical. I know he said that... That's a pretty funny quote about dialectical materialism or whatever. Where he's like, nobody knows what dialectical materialism is, and if they tell you they know what it means, they're lying. It doesn't have a coherent definition, and you can never understand what it is. And the first time I read that, I was like in the process of reading Capital by Marx, and I was like, fuck, I thought I did know what it means, but maybe I don't. If Noam Chomsky doesn't know what it means, how do I know what it means? But I don't mean, this is a tale as old as time, right? This goes back to fucking when Marx was alive. The anarchists and the Marxists were constantly feuding, Bakunin and Proudhon and shit. That's just the left, baby. We didn't need Twitter to hate each other and, attack one another. That's always been the case.
And it's the only thing you can do, because in the more democratic countries, you can't control people with tanks and guns. I mean, maybe to some limited extent, but not very much. There's too much freedom. I mean, it was understood very well, and it is kind of striking that it's in the two main democratic countries, England and the United States. It was realized in parallel about the same time that you're going to have to control people by what was called the public mind.
Yeah, did Jones ever have any other lefties on the show? I'm pretty sure Abby Martin and Robbie Martin, her brother, they were kind of lefty guys in the 9/11 truther kind of movement. But yeah, for sure. I mean, who else? I don't know. It's two completely different vibes. Alex Jones is on Vyvanse while Noam Chomsky is burnt out from the night before playing bingo.
By ideological control. That's where the term manufacturing consent comes from.
Well, take Bush and Clinton. They have the exact same policies on land grabbing, selling out sovereignty, deindustrialization, drugging the children. But you ask the average person, they have this cult-like following of their parties and can't admit it's really the same, what I call the same, it's really two corporate management teams bidding for control of the CEO job of the New World Order.
Well, maybe I'm naive, but I have more faith in the public than that. My feeling is that the general public is rather well aware of this, and I think it shows up in, there's a lot of public opinion study in the United States, mainly because business wants to keep its finger on the public pulse thing.
He's kind of dropping little anarchist pills in this too, where he's like, yeah, you're right, Alex Jones, you're right. And you know what? The problem is big business. He's like, big business is trying to keep its finger on the pulse of everything going on. And that's why they manipulate you and they try to affect how you view the world. And Jones is kind of nodding along and being like, yeah, I mean, I guess this is kind of how you do it, right?
I want to know what people are thinking. So we have
he's sort of being like, you're right, Alex. And also, and going into more of what he wants to get across.
A pretty trustworthy and very extensive polling industry. And what comes out of public attitudes, I think, is kind of revealing. So for the last 20 years or so, about 80% of the population, when they're asked, what do you think the country, who runs the government or what does it do? The answer that they pick out of a set of choices is the government works for the few and the special interests, not the people. And in fact, in the last election, just last November, there's a big project at Harvard University called the Vanishing Voter Project, where they study attitudes towards elections and so on. Right before the election, so this has nothing to do with shenanigans in Florida, but before the election, about 75% of the population felt that there was no election going on in any sense that involved them. What was happening was some kind of game involving rich contributors, party bosses, the public relations industry, which craft.
Yeah, I mean, if Jones listeners aren't put to sleep by Chomsky, they might actually kind of be vibing with what he's saying.
Candidates to say particular things and have particular gestures, which you can't believe what they say. And this was a large majority of the population.
And they wouldn't even let Ralph Nader into the debate when he had a ticket.
They wouldn't, and there was a huge attack against him, mainly from the kind of more liberal press, because he was regarded as disrupting the system of, basically two factions of one party. I mean, the two factions are different. I don't say that Democrats and Republicans are identical, but they share fundamental interests, and those are the interests of their corporate backers. Not very surprising, easy if it was otherwise.
And the
but
problem
I think the one thing where I'm not convinced by what you say is that I think the public is largely aware of it.
Oh, no, sir, I agree with you.
And that's another interesting thing. And I feel this is kind of a surprising point, but I totally agree with Chomsky here, that I think a lot of conspiracy theorists, and I mean, not even just pilled weirdos, but I think a lot of people who analyze politics at all have this whole thing where they're like, the general public are all idiots. They don't get it. They don't understand that they're being manipulated. They don't understand that all this shit is happening, and they have no awareness of this. But then Chomsky here's like, actually, like, generally people do know that corporate media is not trustworthy, and whatever. They're aware of this consent manufacturing and this sort of opinion laundering that's going on, and the way that media, in large part is tilted in a direction that benefits the, stakeholders, whatever, the shareholders, the people who, big business, the politicians, yada, yada, yada. People are aware of that. And I think that's true. I think that conspiratorial people tend to underestimate that about the general population. But there is consent manufacturing going on to the extent that it's successful. Some people are kind of just team sports politics guys, that they're always going to agree with whatever their color team says. But most people aren't really like that. And it's just interesting the way that whatever law gets passed has very little to do with what the population actually wants, right? The consent manufacturing doesn't have to be successful. It just has to be, you don't have to convince people to change their mind, but it's easier to convince people that, like, enough people think that this is what's going to happen. You know what I mean?
I know they're cynical. They know something's wrong. They smell the dead body under the floor, but they can't.
They don't feel. In fact, that's an important point, and I think you're right about that. One of the things that is measured in these studies is what's called helplessness. Like, do you feel there's nothing you can do about it? That figure has been going up, and it reached its historical peak last November.
Professor Chomsky, we've got to break. Coming up the next segment, I really appreciate you joining us because I'm obsessed with this stuff. It seems to be the only game in town. We really want to fight this. I want to talk about their modes of control, examples of propaganda, how they split people's minds and corral the information they receive. When we return with Noam Chomsky from MIT.
Never read Manufacturing Consent, but I'm bothered by how he frames it as some kind of passive dynamic without moral judgment whenever I see him talking about MSM or imperialism. Yeah, I think I know what you mean there. I don't know. I mean, it's a complicated idea. It's Chomsky working with Edward S. Herman at Manufacturing Consent, so it's not completely Chomsky's work. And he does, I think, when you're talking about how it's a passive dynamic, it's the sort of thing where that famous interview clip where he's talking to a guy and the guy's like, well, how dare you say that? He's like British. He's like, how dare you say, like, I don't actually have, no one tells me what to believe. I am a reporter. I blah, 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 blah. I just report on what I actually think. And Chomsky's like, of course you do. And I'm not saying that you're told what to do, but you wouldn't be sitting where you're sitting if you didn't believe the things you believe. And to an extent, there's a passivity there where it's the people who are there don't get that that's what they're there for. And they feel like they're able to speak freely and, you know, whatever. But at the end of the day, there is what's the opposite of passive? Active, I guess. There is an active collaboration of powerful, wealthy interests to put forward a certain propaganda line and to limit the spectrum of acceptable speech, the Overton window, in a, you know, limited kind of right-wing, pro-corporate, pro-capitalist, pro-whatever way. But Manufacturing Consent, honestly, even if you're not a anarchist, even if you're not a fucking leftist, even if you're Alex Jones type, worth a read. A pretty good book that is still applicable, I think, to politics today, although the internet has changed things pretty hugely. A lot of the people that actually vote, you know, boomers and shit, they still get most of their information from traditional media, legacy media, whatever, cable news, where a lot of these all these concepts still apply. And a lot of them get it from fucking their Facebook feed or whatever, you know, wherever boomers are nowadays. Instagram, probably. Twitter, which is definitely a dynamic that is not really covered in Manufacturing Consent, but I still think it has aged very well.
The Genesis Communications Radio Network proudly presents The Alex Jones Show, because there's a war on for your mind.
That's right. That's my motto. That's my slogan.
There's a war on for your mind. I love all the fucking voiceovers that Jones has got here.
Up on Infowars.com, my premier website. From Reuters, yesterday, invited as speakers, Bill Clinton and Tony Blair were groomed at the Bilderberg meeting before rising to fame as U.S. President and British Prime Minister, respectively. They go on to brag about how they run our country. I was a kook 3 years ago to talk about this huge corporate elite, and now they're throwing it in our face. Is that, Professor Chomsky, part of the hopelessness that they're trying to instill in us? I've seen a shift in the propaganda in the last 3 years from denying all of this to throwing it in our face.
Could be, but I think...
So not the way he's going. Jones just rants about the Bilderberg group, and he's like, and is that, what do you think, Chomsky? And Chomsky's like, yeah, maybe. He's like kind of...
I've seen a shift in the propaganda in the last 3 years from denying all of this to throwing it in our face.
Could be, but I think my own feeling is the roots go back farther. If you go back again to the early part of the 1920s, approximately, that's when this stuff really takes off.
Madison Avenue?
Yeah, that's when the public relations industry really exploded. And it grew on the basis of the very sensible assumption that was pretty clearly articulated, that we have to somehow make sure that the general public does not make use of the democratic opportunities that are available to them and leaves us to run the place as we've been doing. And the way to do it was business leaders are saying, look, we have to induce what's called a philosophy of futility. They actually use the phrase. We have to kind of direct people to superficial that. I mean, and that's true of leading intellectuals. I mean, take, say, Walt
So far, these guys are completely in agreement here, eh?
Lippmann, who was he's the leading figure in the U.S. Elite media in the 20th century, major public intellectual. He's the one who invented the phrase manufacture of consent. We borrowed it from him. And he thought it was necessary. It's necessary to manufacture consent in order to make sure that we, what he called the responsible men, can run the affairs of the world without being bothered. And what he didn't say, but what is crucial is your point, that you become a responsible man if you're serving the interests of concentrated private power. Otherwise, you're not.
Professor Chomsky, during the break we were talking about, I just observed this, they will have somebody on TV, both sides for taking private property, the guys of environmentalism, and they're both really on the same side, but they act like this is the two choices.
He does sound like Hogan. Yeah. What you gonna do, brother?
That there's an actual debate going on when it's not controlling the entire system of thought. What do you call that?
Well, I think a sensible, like if you and I were to sit down and invent an effective system of propaganda, we wouldn't have a unique party line, coming from the Kremlin or something, which everybody could detect and nobody would believe. Like in the Soviet Union, nobody believed the propaganda because the force was so plain and the source was so obvious that it didn't believe it. The intelligent way to design a propaganda system is to present the illusion of debate, but within a fixed framework that you're not allowed to escape.
There you go. Now, this is the right way to describe what Jones is always talking about. The parties leaning up against each other, and they lean against each other, you see, so they can't be toppled. But no, that isn't really right. It's about limiting the spectrum of acceptable debate.
So you start with certain assumptions. Everyone has to accept those assumptions or they're not admitted into the discussion. Once you accept those assumptions, you want to stimulate the most lively and intense.
Yeah, I don't know. As I said before on this stream, I'm going to let the Parenti fans take the W on the Chomsky thing for now. But I do ultimately think, Chomsky was probably not hanging out with Epstein for nefarious reasons. He seems to have really, really liked Epstein. He hung out with him quite a bit and was like writing shit for him, wrote this glowing recommendation of his character for some reason, a really long thing about it. He hung out with him a lot at a bunch of his different properties. Yes, Epstein was probably donating to MIT, probably funding things for Chomsky, and a lot of being a professor is hanging out with people you don't necessarily like in order to get money for your fucking university. But it does seem like Chomsky and Epstein vibed. And even that one, the worst photo for me is the one where he's hanging out with Bannon. He's got his arm around him or whatever. I don't know. They're laughing at each other anyway. And the best explanation of that made most sense to me was like someone on Twitter. I wish I could remember who, but somebody was just like, yeah, imagine being Chomsky and you're constantly hanging out with woke scolds and annoying fucking lefty, whatever, university students and Amy Goodman and whatever. And not that there's anything wrong with Amy Goodman. She's great. But, and then you get to hang out with like a fun, drunk, racist Irish guy, Steve Bannon. It's probably kind of fun. And I gotta say, that made a lot of sense to me, I mean, yeah. And like Chomsky's always said about Epstein, when he was even questioned about it, and people were like, and you hung out with him after his first conviction. And he'd be like, well, and he wouldn't even say it like that. He'd be like, well, as you know, I think that. But his excuse made sense, I got to say, to me. It kind of spoke to me in a way where he's like, well, actually, when people serve their time, they're meant to be forgiven and they're meant to be given a second chance. That's how the justice system works. Yes, I knew he was in prison for this horrible crime, but when people are released from jail, we forgive them and we allow them to re-enter society. And honestly, I do agree with that. I think that is a good answer for why you were hanging out with Epstein at that point in his life. Most people don't do that. Most people are like, I didn't even know, or whatever, which makes me think they probably did know. But I do think that's true. I think that forgiveness is actually a beautiful thing. And in most cases, it's something that you are able to offer someone that, this is something that, I'm not like a religious person, but I think that when I look at Jesus Christ, this guy's performing all these miracles and shit, turning water into wine, walking on water, blah, yada, 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 shit like that. I can't do that shit. Why the fuck would I be inspired by that? But the way Christ is able to forgive people is something that anybody can just do. In a sense, it is a miracle that you can forgive someone for anything. And I think it's kind of cool that that's an ability that human beings have, and it's difficult to do. But so anyway, I don't know. Sorry if that sounds fucking weird, but I think that his excuse for hanging out with Epstein is okay, but I do admit overall does not look great. Like I said, the Team Parenti's going home with a win on this one.
Debate and controversy, but ensuring that those assumptions are maintained. Anybody questions those assumptions, they're just not part of the discussion.
So
that's an effective propaganda.
So we feel like we're part of the decision-making process when we're actually just cheerleading for what the elite want to do.
Yeah, we're choosing among things that concentrate.
Yeah, I mean, we can read the emails back and forth between Epstein and Chomsky, and it's just Epstein being like, oh, I heard this thing about ants that blah, 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 blah. Actually, they do this, and doing some weird fucking, probably just repeating something that some other smart person told him a week earlier, and Chomsky being like, okay, what? That's weird. Whatever you say, man. And like Epstein getting kind of embarrassed and being like, oh, it's like when you cube numbers and you cube of this is this and cube of that is this. And then he sends the whole conversation to Ehud Barak, and Ehud Barak's like, dude, you actually got one of those cubes wrong. This is the cube of it. And he's like, fuck, you're right. Thank you. Oh, God. He's really trying to impress Noam big time in the emails. And Noam is kind of like, okay, man.
Howard really doesn't care that much about. I mean, you see this very clearly. I mean, take, say, one of the major issues for the public, look at polls, and it's understandable, are these international economic agreements, the things that are...
Yeah, I think Epstein was a genius at one thing, and that was like scamming people. He was a con man. He was a brilliant con man. He was so able to convince people that he was who they wanted him to be. Pathological liar, very convincing, very charming, and he was able to convince people that he was smart. Some people kind of saw through his facade. And I mean, he was smart in some ways, but he was able to convince people that he was on their level. He hung out with all these professors and physics professors and math professors and shit, and was somehow able to convince them he was this genius. He was able to convince everybody that he was a money genius. And it turns out he wasn't really doing any of that. He made most of his fortune by scamming rich people. Yeah, it's interesting.
Called free trade agreements. So that's not what they are. Those are very big issues. And people are very much worried about the trade deficit because they know that affects their rent.
40% tariff on us.
Yeah, actually, for sure, Finland. Informed about political or economic goings on? Yeah, definitely.
We have a 2% on them. They call that free trade. You're not an isolationist, are you?
No, I'm not. But this is stuff is not
great. They say. I mean,
yeah, that's what they say. Right. Of course. The point I'm trying to make is this. These are very big issues for the population. They are also big issues for the business world. But the population and the business world happens to be on opposite sides. Therefore, the issues do not arise in political campaigns. So, like, for example, the free trade area of the Americas, which is an enormous agreement, with a lot of consequences, that has yet to be discussed in the media. It's been negotiated for 3 years. It finally broke through at the Summit of the Americas meeting in Quebec. There was such a furor over it, had to be mentioned. But it's been under negotiation for a couple of years by corporate managers, by trade ministers of governments who are basically corporate representatives. The media know all about it, but they don't want the public to know. It did not come up in the political campaign. The nature of these arrangements has yet to be made public. I mean, you can sort of figure it out if you do a research project. But these things are not made available to the public, and it's for a very clear reason.
Our final segment with the professor with solutions.
So it's funny that a lot of the videos on this call this a debate. But honestly, we're more than halfway through now. All they've done is agree with each other. And Chomsky, even when he's kind of gently correcting Alex, it's all good. They're all good.
Coming up. Welcome back, my friends. We've only got about 8 or 9 minutes left.
There's the new New York Times article on Epstein's finances is pretty good, where it goes into his backstory as how he got his money in the 80s, 90s, or whatever, and a lot of it is about cozying up to wealthy people, often through women, either dating a woman or introducing a wealthy person to women or something like that. Cozying up to them, making them big promises, ripping them off, taking as much money from them as he could. In the late 80s with Towers Financial, pulling off the largest Ponzi scheme in U.S. history at that time. And with Les Wexner giving himself power of attorney, full control over all of Les Wexner's funds in the fucking 2000s with Leon Black, getting all his fucking money. I mean, there was scamming going on, and it does not seem that there was much actual, like, the shit that he was promising. Oh, I am going to help you save money. I'm going to help you hide your money from taxation. I'm going to help you with this. I got all these secret tricks. It seems like he was mostly just funneling their money into his own fucking pocket. It's interesting. Yeah, I think Wexner wasn't tricked. I think Wexner was tricked and attracted to Epstein. But, you know, Wexner put Epstein in control of his fucking entire fortune. There is some crazy shit going on there behind the scenes. You don't just do that to the guy that you're hooking up with, your financial advisor who you're hooking up with. Okay, you can have my entire fortune. I think there was scamming involved there. I don't know. Who knows?
Left, really about 5 minutes left with our guest, Noam Chomsky, professor from MIT, one of the experts there on the globalists and their activities manipulating our minds. Sir, other key areas of manipulation that people can become conscious of, because we become conscious of this propaganda, it actually becomes, in my experience, an irritant, as you were saying earlier, in Russia, and acts against them. And then what are some solutions to counter this?
Well, I think the main solution is anything you're doing. I mean, people have to be offered the opportunity and encouraged to take the opportunity to think critically, not to believe, not to uncritically accept what you're told, to ask the question, what are the assumptions? Do I accept those assumptions? To search for information and analysis over a wide range. I wouldn't want anybody to believe what I'm saying. I mean, they should ask, is it true? Let's find out if it's true. Let's check out the information from a variety of sources. When you have a radio, it can be a very important instrument.
It's funny, like, it's such a, what's the word, humble way of responding to criticism, to be like, yeah, no, I mean, I could be wrong too. Maybe I'm also manufacturing a little bit of consent here. Look into the shit I say. Don't believe what I say either.
Extremely important instrument. There can be real involvement in interchange, and that can be a highly important educational instrument, and there are others. I mean,
so it's not just sound bites. People having these ideas.
These are not trivial issues. You have to really think them through. The thing that I mentioned, for example, the international economic agreements, those, you have to think about them. You have to learn about them. You can't just listen to a slogan and say, okay, that's what I think.
Well, these are unelected, unaccountable international boards controlled by the top 20 corporations and banks telling us they're going to run our lives. I mean, that's a horrible idea, but most Americans don't know that.
Yeah, but they can find out. I mean, they can find out. The information is available. You have to work to get it. It's an extremely hard thing to do by yourself. If people are really atomized and separated from one another and spending their entire lives, trying either to put food on the table or to get deeper in debt with things they are told to buy but don't want, then they really are controlled. I mean, people have to be able to get together. Even in the sciences, the way you come up with ideas is by working together. You don't sit somewhere and have to figure out how the world works.
Well, that's like these $150 Nike tennis shoes that are so ugly I wouldn't touch them if they were free. But the young people are just begging and have to have them or they're not human.
Yeah, and if you watch, I sometimes watch with television with my grandchildren, but what they are subjected to is criminal. I mean, they're
This is great. Watching TV with his grandkids.
Barraged by propaganda, teaching them from infancy that the only thing in life is getting those tennis shoes or those Pokemon cards or whatever it may be. And
remember Pokemon cards? Remember when people were manufacturing consent about getting a shiny Charizard? That's funny. Traded your holographic Charizard for that Magneton? One of those? No, Magneto's an X-Men. Magneton, I think? Is that right? Anyway, yeah. No, that sucks. Yeah, no, I also didn't know a shit. I never was able to buy Pokemon cards, but someone gave me one once, and I was like, I'll just keep trading this until I have a lot of them. And I was trying to do that. And at some point I got a Drowsy. And then I was like, and I'll trade this, but I didn't know what I was doing. I traded it for a Poke-Flute. And I remember the guy I was trading was like, are you sure? That's a bad deal for you. And I was like, I want it. And then I traded for the Poke-Flute, and then no one would trade the Poke-Flute with anything. And that was the last Pokemon card I ever got. Sad story. Sad story. Those things were expensive though, man. It was like $50 for a deck. In fucking 1999 money.
That is really a way to control people in a very ugly fashion. People have to learn how to escape from that. It's a hard struggle.
What are some of the other facets, other propaganda venues and systems they use against us?
I mean, Alex Jones, it seems like Alex Jones is like paying attention to him and being like, oh, this is good shit. what else? Like, he's asking kind of good questions and everything too. Guys, don't worry. If you're getting bored by this, and by the amount of people who have dropped off the stream since I started playing this Noam Chomsky clip, I feel like that's a lot. But we're gonna finish it. We got about 10 minutes left. Let me assure you, it does get into a heated debate towards the end. Most of it, they get along great, but it does heat up. All right. So you gotta just stick with it for the nice parts. If you can't handle it at its getting along great, you don't deserve it at its now they're mad. All right, we're almost there.
Way issues are all the way from the elite media to the educational system to commercial propaganda.
I found that sitcoms and drama shows are full of the most. I mean, I was watching NYPD Blue.
Hear Chomsky go, absolutely.
To commercial propaganda.
I hear sitcoms and
I found that sitcoms and drama shows are full of the most. I mean, I was watching NYPD
absolutely. That's awesome.
Blue Monday night or Tuesday night. They were choking and torturing someone, saying, "We'll frame you," and these are the good guy heroes doing it. Then I read a law enforcement magazine. They're saying, "Hey, we."
Oh damn! You had a binder full of that shit. Damn! You were one of the kids I was so jealous of.
Might need to institute torture.
Yeah, well, I agree. I mean, I don't know much about it. It's a part of the culture I just don't know much about, but I'm sure you're right that the framing and the structure of sitcoms and popular entertainment is designed, and probably consciously designed, to instill a certain kind of attitude, interest, concern that will marginalize people, that will keep them away from the basic decisions and choices about how to run their lives and how to run their society. Because the idea is that's not supposed to be in the public domain. That's supposed to be in private, powerful circles. Take, say, these trade agreements that are coming along. One crucial part of them is to take what are called services and hand them over to private power. Well, services are just about anything that people would care about. You know, health, education, water, or almost anything that would be in the public arena where people would want to make decisions. That has to be taken out of the public arena, put into private hands, unaccountable private hands, and then, what's left for the public is which kind of shoes I buy.
But these private corporations are taking on governmental power, and take the Lower Colorado River Authority here in Texas. They're private, but they have SWAT teams and will arrest you.
Right.
And it's the ultimate tyranny, and then they say, hey, we're...
He was already platforming Pachenik at this time. Pachenik was there from the beginning.
Corporation, you can't see our records.
That's right.
You can ask questions. Two more quick questions, sir. I want to bring up a fact. Okay, semantics. You say democratic countries. Okay, fine. I hear Republicans, Democrats saying democracy. That's a semantical deception. The Founding Fathers said a democracy is horrible. It's two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. A republic has a rule of law, separation of powers, a Bill of Rights that you can't violate. In a democracy, 51% say all the black people are killed or all the white people are killed, and it's done. Or take that farm, it's done. Right there. I mean, we hear this word democracy all the time. Well, we're a republic, and there's a big difference.
So you've heard this, right? This has been an old school conspiracy fucking pilled belief that it's like, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. And that's totally different, and that's why, and it'll justify whatever the fuck they needed to in the moment. Listen to the Pledge of Allegiance. It says we're a republic. That's the difference. And so here's 2001. Here's Alex Jones busting that out. How does Chomsky respond?
Actually, I think the real issues are elsewhere.
Okay, for Chomsky, this is a fucking declaration of war. Actually, I think the problems are elsewhere. That's basically him being like, you're a fucking idiot. What the fuck are you talking about? That makes zero sense. You are historically and politically illiterate. Get over yourself. You know nothing. You know nothing. Pick up a fucking book, you fucking troglodyte. That's what he's really saying here. But it doesn't come out like that.
Actually, I think the real issues are elsewhere. I mean, the distinction between republic and democracy that you're describing was not really what concerned the Founding Fathers. What they were concerned about, you read, say, James Madison, the main framer, what he was concerned about, but he wanted to have a system in which power would lie in the hands of what he called the wealth of the nation, the more capable class of men.
And now he's talking about the Founding Fathers, and he's talking shit about them? No, that is not some shit. Alex Jones is from Texas. okay? He loves America. He loves the Founding Fathers. That is one fucking matrix that he is not going to wake up from.
Reason was because the goal of government, this phrase, is to protect the minority of the opulent against the majority. So the system was designed to try to ensure that the wealth of the nation would essentially be in control and that the general public would be fragmented and marginalized and so on. Now, if you look over the course of time...
And this is a thing that Chomsky quotes all the time. If you're a Chomsky head, you've heard him talk about this from the Madison. Is this from the Federalist Papers? This is actually true, okay? If you didn't know about this, I'm sorry. This is what is in the fucking terms of the Senate. This is what your founding fathers, your precious founding fathers, we're talking about here, okay? They were extremely worried about holding on to power. If these observations be just, our government ought to secure the permanent interests of the country against innovation. Landholders ought to have a share in the government to support these invaluable interests and to balance and check the other. They ought to, so they as in the government, ought to be so constituted as to protect the minority of the opulent against the majority. The Senate, therefore, ought to be this body. And to answer these purposes, the purposes of the Senate, the purposes of the government, is to have permanency and stability. Various have been the propositions, but my opinion is the longer they continue in office, the better will these views be answered. Isn't that nuts? I mean, I remember the first time I read that, I was like, what the fuck? That's crazy. This is why Chomsky's kind of mind-blowing if you're unfamiliar with these concepts. Like, I think a lot of people don't realize that shit. But anyway, I mean, I don't even mean to sound condescending. I was just talking about how conspiracy theorists are always like, oh, no one gets it. But I didn't know that shit. It's interesting. But yo, you can't drop that type of truth bomb on InfoWars, okay? You can't do it. Alex Jones is not going to stand for it. He will stand up against the technotronic technocracy any day of the week.
A middle-class flourish here, though, Professor.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the best part of the whole thing. So this is because Chomsky's like, the fucking Madison wrote that we need to protect the minority of the opulent against the tyranny of the lower class, or whatever. And then Jones, well, we have a thriving middle class, Chomsky.
So on. Now, if you look over the course of time...
A middle-class flourish here, though, Professor.
Yeah. Pardon?
The middle-class flourish here, 4% of the population with half the wealth.
4% of the population with half the wealth?
Well, that's not 4% of the population.
And I love this part where Chomsky actually laughs at him. You catch that? He's like, the middle-class flourished here, Professor. 4% of the population with half the wealth. And Chomsky kind of breaks character a little bit, where he's trying to be like, you're right, Alex, and furthermore, you should also be an anarcho-syndicalist. And at this point, instead of being like, yeah, you've got a good point, I just want to slightly gently add that, he's like, no, you're a fucking idiot. Wait, let's hear it again. Listen to Chomsky laugh.
Yeah, pardon?
The middle-class flourish here, 4% of the population with half the wealth.
Well, that's not 4% of the population isn't the middle class. The middle class is, but I think, look, over the
that's 4% is not the middle class, bro.
Centuries, there have been a lot of struggles against this elitist concept, and the options for public participation did increase substantially.
But was it for them to say that we would all be armed, have the right to keep and bear arms?
Well, that's not what they meant back at that time. What they meant is, you read the Second Amendment, they said, in the context of raising militias, people should have the right to bear arms. We're living in a different world. We're not raising militias. The question whether people should have arms is a separate issue.
Now he's getting into the Second Amendment nuances and the historical context.
Back here, the United States is off the spectrum of international society.
Do you think people are hopeful? Are you hopeful that folks are going to wake up to this system?
I think people, again, like I say, maybe I'm naive, but I think that people more or less understand it. And what they feel is helpless. And they have to be able to overcome that feeling of helplessness. And there are ways of doing it. In the past, people have organized, they have struggled, they've achieved rights. We have all kinds of rights and freedoms that didn't exist not long ago. And And that's because people were not willing to just sit back and take it, but to organize, learn, act, educate, do things to change the world so that it fits their concerns and needs. We have the opportunity to do that. And we're very privileged. We live in a society where, people are not controlled by force. That's an extremely important privilege.
Well, Mr. Chomsky, I have to be honest with you, and I really appreciate.
All right, so here's Chomsky. They're getting along great. Everything's cool. They're gelling. They're talking about the elites, the media, manipulation, manufacturing consent, the intentional fucking molding of the American mind. All that shit well and good. But as soon as Chomsky says that actually the Founding Fathers were evil and the fucking Second Amendment doesn't mean what you think it does, then you got a problem. So here's where the debate begins. Here we go.
Appreciate you coming on and tell folks about some of your publications and let you get back to work. But right there, it seemed like a groupthink herding mechanism when you talked about the
Oh, Chomsky, seems like you're doing a groupthink herding mechanism.
Guns, and you said, well, I think America, the U.S. is, off from, the main line, the rest of the world, as if, we're a little backwards that we still have guns. I mean, that's that whole groupthink right there.
It could be. I mean, again.
He's like, maybe. You could be right. He's like, hey, don't take everything I say.
I don't think it's an obvious question, and I think we'd really have to talk about it and think it through. But if you want my opinion, I think guns are much too easy to get in the United States.
But England's crime rate just doubled 3 years after they took all the guns.
Well, see, the United States does not have a particularly high crime rate. It's been sort of toward the high end of the spectrum of industrial societies, but not out of range. The one real difference between the United States and other countries is killings with guns. That's very high. Yeah, it's very high here as compared to other countries.
Look at The Economist. No longer. We're number 12. England and Australia are number 1 and 2 now.
In deaths by guns?
Yes, now they are.
I don't think
London is now more dangerous.
And this part, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the actual stats on this are, but this is not right. Is it? England took away all the guns and their murder rate skyrocketed? Did any of that happen? I don't think so.
Only in the last 3 years. It wasn't 3 years.
The Economist?
Years ago. You're right, 3 years ago. It's now worse than Washington, D.C., sir.
In deaths by guns?
Yeah, I have about 4 different universities, 3 different governments, Australian Bureau of Statistical Data. It's all on Infowars.com right now, Professor.
Okay, I'd take a look, but if that's
source, Infowars.com.
the case, I'd look at the reasons, and I would...
Yeah, he's comparing just London to the entire U.S., so maybe that's what it was, because it seems crazy.
I suspect that the reason is that there has been an increased availability of guns.
And even Chomsky, it seems like that, right? He's a straight line, but like you can tell in his head, he's like, there's no way that's true. But he's out loud, he's like, okay, well, if that's the case, then I imagine it's probably because of this. He's pushing back so lightly here.
If there's going to be an increase in availability, then there are going to be crimes using guns.
You're right, sir. They outlawed the guns, and so now the criminals...
They've always had guns out.
So now the criminals have a reason to bring them in because the black market's made it very...
You're right, sir. So
lucrative.
See, I don't think guns were always outlawed. I mean, even the police didn't have guns in England until very recently.
Oh, people had guns over there.
No, look, in England, even the police were not armed with guns until fairly recently.
Professor Chomsky, the police didn't have guns. The people had handguns and rifles. They just confiscated them 3 years ago.
No, that happened. There was an effort to do that in Canada, but that's a different story. I mean, look, this is a big issue, and we have to...
Was there a time in 1998 where everyone in England had their guns taken away?
I bet you $1 million right now.
I really don't agree with you about the facts here.
Well,
but these are factual questions. We could settle it.
I have the facts. Well, I'd love to debate you on it. Real quick, tell folks about some of your books and publications.
Pardon? Sorry, I didn't hear.
Books and publications. Tell folks about it.
Well, there is the book that you mentioned before, Manufacturing Consent.
Let me check my source. Hang on. It says here it's me. I said it. You can look it up on what's coming out of my mouth right now. Yeah, very yin and yang. Yeah. Noam Chomsky's tone of voice has only very subtly changed from when they were getting along to now that they hate each other. But Alex Jones has gotten so much more animated. No, that's right, sir. The guns were taken away.
And a new edition of that is coming out. It's about these issues of propaganda, mind control. That's coming out in a couple of months. The last book that appeared was one that was called Rogue States, but it concentrates on the United States and on rights issues and foreign affairs issues. And
even Chomsky doesn't really sound interested in what Chomsky's saying. He's slugging himself. He's like, yeah, it's a new book. It's kind of just about what exactly we're talking about. It sounds kind of boring, honestly. I don't recommend it.
Argues you can read it and see if it's right.
What about websites?
Pardon?
Websites.
There are plenty of websites. There's one called The Net, which has a ton of material, including a lot of my
The Net, as if he's reading the name of the website for the first time.
Things, and it has accesses to archives in which these things are available, and there are others.
All right, Professor Chomsky, really do appreciate you joining us. I would just say this, one big part of controlling the thought process and the debate, where the rat thinks it has a choice, it can go forward, left, right, or back, but it's still in their system, is having people out there talking about this propaganda state in Madison Avenue and only pointing out certain parts of it and then misdirecting people back into the big government paradigm. And frankly, sir, you need to get the information on the guns, on the land grabbing, on all of it, because I have it right here.
Classic Jones. I have the information right here. It's like, okay, then show us. He never does. I got the sources.
And I respect your work, but at the same time, just here talking to you, I think some of it isn't as honest as it could be.
So, that's for others to decide when they look at it.
And again, he's doing these ad hominem attacks, and Chomsky's like, yeah, maybe. Maybe you're right.
Yeah.
Certainly is. Yeah. My audience is pretty well educated.
That's very funny, too. My audience is pretty well educated. They've gone to the school of Alex Jones University.
Thanks for joining us. Say hi to David Rockefeller for me. There goes.
So he's like, okay, so peep this, all right? The whole time, even when they're fighting, Alex Jones is still not that intense. I mean, he's intense compared to Chomsky, but he's still kind of being like, sir, I think you might need to educate yourself. That's kind of the worst thing he says. And then as soon as he hangs up with Chomsky, he goes fully, he's not in an 11 yet. He cranks it to an 11 the second he hangs up. Listen.
When they look at it.
Certainly is. Yeah. My audience is pretty well educated. Thanks for joining us. Say hi to David Rockefeller for me.
Say hi to David Rockefeller for me.
There goes Noam Chomsky, ladies and gentlemen, and I've read his books, and now I'm more sure of it than ever. He's a New World Order shill, up one side and down the other.
Bro, what? How are you going to say that? He's not even there. He's like having like a really nice interview for at least 70% of this, and then he sort of pisses him off a little bit, and he pushes back lightly, considering who he is. But then as soon as he's gone, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for that New World Order shill, member of the Illuminati, card-carrying, Kabbalist, Satanist, Babylonian mystic, Noam Chomsky. I've heard he was right there during the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Evil, evil man. It's just like, what the fuck, dude? How the hell did you go that 0 to 100 so quick?
Oh, they never had guns in England. Oh, no, they never had guns in England. They most certainly.
Yeah, real tough guy after Chomsky hung up. As if, like, what was Chomsky gonna, like, God, I wish that he was a little bit fucking bolder, because how much more fun would it have been if Chomsky was there to go back? And Chomsky wouldn't have been able to win that. Chomsky probably would have hung up on him rather than continue that sort of debate. But he doesn't even do it until he's got, and he goes so hard against him.
Certainly gun ownership wasn't as prolific. You've seen the video that's been on nationwide of them cutting the guns in half over there, confiscating the handguns, the rifles. 3 years ago, we've read the reports, The Economist, WorldNet Daily, Sydney Express, Bureau of Statistical Data. We spent obnoxious amounts of time on it. Washington, D.C. has the highest crime rate in the country, total gun ban. And Chomsky sat there and tried to use groupthink on us. Well, I think we're out of the mainstream of the rest of the world having these guns. Now, if you ask me, I don't think they're too available. Because, well, I would say that the crime rate's gone up in England because of availability. For criminals, yes, because they made them illegal, and now the black market value has exploded. Yeah, I had to spank him there at the end, and I certainly enjoyed it.
Oh, my God.
Chomsky.
I had to spank him right there. Yeah, you mean after you hung up? After you hung up on him, you had to spank him? You can't spank someone who's not there. That's a spanking fantasy.
World Order shill.
Once again, he calls him a New World Order shill.
It makes me want to puke. The spanking there at the end, and I certainly enjoyed it. Chomsky.
That should be, oh God, that's such a funny clip. Had to spank him there at the end, and I certainly enjoyed it. Some fucking BDSM porn company should just use that as their producer tag at the end of their videos.
You're a New World Order shill, and I've got twice the brain you've got with both arms tied behind my back.
That is a Limbaugh line. I got twice the brain as you with both arms tied behind my back. That is plagiarism.
I tell you, these people, it makes me want to puke. Our founding fathers were elitist. They wanted...
Yes, they were, dude. All the founding fathers were fucking rich motherfuckers with hundreds of slaves. They literally had slaves. They're not just like the mind control slave. No, they had actual slaves. They were, if anyone is elite, it's George Washington and his fucking rich-ass Nepo baby fucking bros. Everybody's an elitist except for Thomas Paine, who was chill.
To protect the elite, they were bad.
Yeah, man. Sorry to tell you this, man. But yeah, founding fathers were not all they're cracked up to be.
I go, funny. 4% of the world's population, 50% of the wealth.
That's also not... What are you talking about?
We own land over here. We've got guns. Our crime rate's much lower than the rest of the industrialized world now.
Oh, is he saying... So he's 4% of the world's population, 50% of the wealth. Is he saying that's what America is? I thought he was talking about like 4% of America has 50% of America's wealth. No, he's talking about the world. So he's talking about American GDP. But it's like, bro, that has nothing to do with the middle class. Yeah, America is still the wealthiest country in the world. It still has fucking crazy poverty rates because all that money is concentrated at the very top. Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
And he's sitting there going, I don't really agree with that. I'm like, here's fact this, fact B, fact C, fact Z, fact Q, MM. Ooh, I'll check it out, but I don't think.
Oh, I love him doing a dumb guy voice for Chomsky, too.
Think about what Noam Chomsky said. We got about 25 minutes until our next guest joins us about giving nuclear reactors to China while our power's getting turned off.
Oh, man, that's awesome. Good call recommending this to me to Finland because it's such a good example of the way that left and right wing kind of, conspiratorial thinking is so aligned until it gets to a certain point. And in this case, it's really historical, awareness, historical literacy, and understanding of statistics. And instead of Alex Jones is kind of regurgitating NRA talking points and shit, he doesn't have a broad understanding of the world. I don't know. I mean, is he a shill? Is Alex Jones the New World Order shill? Is he paid by the Koch brothers or the fucking, all these interest groups? Or is he just a fucking charismatic Republican? I mean, to me, at least at this point in time, Alex is a paid shill. But I do find him, in spite of how awful he's been for the world, I find him so entertaining. He's so good. When he does he's doing the Chomsky voice at the end. Oh, well, actually, the founding fathers were bad. Sir, no, they were not. They were good. That's what I learned in school. I live in Austin, Texas. We don't put up with that kind much around here. Yeah, useful idiot. Basically the definition. It's when he shaved, for sure. I think so too. I think he's on the payroll now. Gang, it's been a good stream. To quote our buddy, the newest mod on the mod squad, Big Jerry. Great stream. Hope you guys enjoyed yourselves, and I'm gonna peace out. Goblin team, assemble. Okay, now that we're assembled, let's leave.